about to be joined now by Graham, Rob, Andy, and William, who you've already heard from earlier today, and they're going to be talking about data and Open BIM and what all of that means for the industry. And I think some may have heard of things like IDS. So yeah, really looking forward to having them have this discussion, and thank you all for joining us. Thank you always for being a part of this journey, and Andy, thank you for collaborating with us also as well. You're a software vendor, but we think you have a massive role to play in all of this, and yeah, we're really looking forward to having you discuss between each other. We're going to have Graham moderating the session, so I'll disappear again. And yeah, thank you all. I'll leave you to it.
All right, cheers all. Welcome everyone. Hopefully everyone's had a great day so far. Some really interesting talks. Today, obviously, this is the last panel. Like Mo had said, there's a few topics we're going to have a look at. Open BIM, IDS, IFC, Kobe. Again, we could speak for hours and hours and hours, and I'm sure me, Rob, William, and Andy could bore you senseless and this sort of stuff. So we'll hopefully give you some useful tidbits to take away with you. It was interesting what Mo finished off where Morta is not a common-data environment. Yeah, I could maybe argue maybe it is. You know, maybe there's a future where databases replace common-data environments. Maybe that's a discussion we can have later on. First of all, let's do some introductions. Say hello, Rob.
Hi, Rob Jackson, Head of Information Management Services at RB Digital. We're a consultancy offering digital services to consultants, clients, and contractors.
Excellent. Cheers, Rob. Say hello, Andy.
Hi, everyone. Andy Ward. I'm Chief Executive at XBIM. We're a technology provider, ISV. If you've heard of us, you'll see us behind the scenes in lots of different software firms, people like Viewpoints or Glider BIM. Behind the scenes, we're powering them for that Open BIM technology.
All right, excellent. And say hello, William.
Yeah, good afternoon. William Jones, I'm the Deputy Head of Business Engineering for Babcock International Group. Previous session on data validation. Sorry?
Yeah, maybe just if you can reconfigure your mic. I'll say hello for me. So my name is Graham Stewart. I'm CEO and founder of Digital Gorilla. Again, we're an information management consultancy based in Glasgow, Scotland, hence the accent. William, you twist your mic again?
He's digitized himself.
Always goes wrong that demo, doesn't it? Always goes wrong. It's always the way. Right. Okay. Carry on. Okay. Excellent. Right. Probably let's carry on, and we'll get everybody. William was talking about earlier on, so everybody knows who William is anyway. So let's carry on. Open BIM, IDS, IC, and I think when we spoke about a couple of weeks, guys, we spoke about almost we could frame this around where we are, and where we're actually going. So maybe that's a place we can start then. So Open BIM has been about for a good number of years, similar with IFC. Where do we think it has been? What benefit, I suppose this is quite a good question, what benefit has it brought so far? And where do we think the benefits are going to be going forward? Rob, you better kick off on that one.
Yeah, sure. I mean, historically, where have we been? Well, if you go back probably 10 or so more years, you know, there was a bit of a battle around using certain technology before thinking about how we share that information, and people had already maybe selected some of their tools. And I guess we went through a bit of a battle. You and I, Graham, probably you know, had a few battles over the years about the right way to go with this. But I think over the years, it's become increasingly obvious or important that open standards are critical, not just from an authoring perspective, but ultimately, you know, when contractors want to come and use this information using different systems, you've got clients obviously then using different systems and wanting information consistency through that process. So I think the sort of the journey with open standards has very much moved on. I think the industry is largely pretty much supportive. There's still exceptions to that, but largely supportive of the need to share information irrespective of platforms and not be tied to platforms. And you know, certainly seen that, you know, the use of IFC or industry foundation classes to share models has become more and more commonplace, and with that to some degree data. we're still, I think, in the early stages of it, in sharing models and even data. Probably some people don't even know when they save out an IFC what that really means in truth. And we still have some way to go ultimately to get to the full use of this. But I think the industry is at least the UK is in a good place for building on that. Will's obviously started to do some of that already, and Andy's got a tool that does that. So we're in a good place, I think, where for the argument about why we should do it. I think the industry is largely coalesced around that.
Yeah. Okay. Andy, you want to follow up with obviously you're using IFC quite a lot. How does that tie in what you're currently doing?
Well, I guess our origins are in open interoperable data in construction. That's where we started. Obviously, what we're known for, we implemented the Building Smart standards, and we've talked about some of them already. In fact, we'll just drill into what they are. IFC being the open model standard, containing geometry, data, metadata, all that kind of information that's come from many different disciplines. COBie, we've mentioned a couple of times, which is a much more simplified open version of a model, data only. Of course, it typically comes as a spreadsheet format. It's tabular. We've also talked about other things like IDS. IDS is a new standard, information delivery specification. That's something we're doing a lot of work with at the minute, because it helps the whole industry start to kind of control a bit more what's actually in these files that we're exchanging. They're all open and brilliant, and we can access them for the next 100 years. But if the information in there is not what I wanted, it's not much use to me. So IDS, I think, is really important. There's a third leg to that stool called BCF, which is really how do you correct and communicate issues. But okay, I needed X in the model, I didn't get X. How do I send that information back to a client? And that you can still see that ties back to things like information requirements, EIRs, and so on. Often find their way into or start in a tool like Morta.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Warren, what about Open BIM with obviously the validation stuff that you're currently doing?
Yeah, I think hopefully you can hear me now.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Ideal. Typical technology, isn't it? Yeah. So Open BIM and sort of IFC thing, I think for me selfishly, it's at the core of what I'm doing, what the team are doing. It's I'm not going to talk about sort of software, but unleashing sort of proprietary software and going into that open space obviously enables interoperability and interfacing with other applications in a standardized way. And I think using things such as IFC OpenShell to be able to interrogate that, but then having standards, as we're just discussing, IDS, BCF, and even the BSDD, the data dictionary, it enables standardization. And for us, we've got a number of programs. Everybody's following the same rule book. We're not reinventing the wheel at every opportunity, and that's something as an industry I think we quite like to do. And so I think, yeah, having standardized schemas and standardized approaches to everything is key to how we as an industry apply it. And the prime example I use is like shipping containers as an example. I see a shipping container almost as like an IFC file. Regardless of where it goes in the world, it is a standard that everybody follows. And the shipping container is the information in a way. So that's sort of the analogy I use internally, and it sort of changes people's minds about how we approach information and data.
All right, cool. Yeah, so from my point of view, yeah, me and Rob have had various discussions over the years, various events where I've seen, is it any good? Does it have any benefit? And again, for me, I can see the massive benefit of everybody working the same standard. But for me, I've always seen that pushback from my side, because if the whole design team is using Revit, why do we need to use IFC? Surely that just throws another span in the works, and it makes people have to work a lot harder to actually almost deliver the same amount of data. So again, I've seen some pushback in that sort of sense, but I can see the real benefit, and especially when new systems come up like IDS, where we can actually start to automate checking procedures rather than using other software that might have used IFC to do that in the past. Then I can see the benefit as well. Again, the whole point is to make things easier for everybody to adopt, and it's not costing them an arm and a leg to train everyone as well. We should think about that. Again, that can probably lead into, again, Andy mentioned about COBie there. Maybe we can have a quick discussion on COBie. COBie still is very relevant. Again, it still is, for me, it's still a very good data schema to structure how things are actually named, along with IFC and how we can exchange stuff. But again, it still amazes me, even after almost 2007, so it's almost 15, 16, 17 years. there's still a massive resistance to actually delivering copy, and the lack of education around it as well. Even though from a design team point of view, there's actually very little information they need to put in. I'd probably say the biggest amount of time a design team has to do is actually classify the model. Everything else is just things you should already do, like name spaces, name elements. There's no rocket science. Andy, how have you seen design teams adopt COBOL over the years, and is there any insights for where the problems lie that you see?
Well, I think if you look at the kind of the past stroke current, the challenge is that it's quite difficult to test this stuff. It's very kind of, you throw it over the wall almost. It's just exported from some process, and you know, whether it's the IFC or the COBE, it's output from a federated, complex team, you know, and it has to come together and be coordinated and make sense as a whole. But it's the tooling around assuring it isn't great at the minute. So I think yes, you say I want my spaces named, I want my types to have, you know, certain metadata or spares or whatever. How do you assure that? And actually, a lot of the kind of the assurance around it is very technical, and it's certainly not in a kind of client's language, and it's not accessible to a client, and often it's not accessible to the people who are producing the information. So I think what we've got to do, and what things that IDS will help us do, is democratize that. So you, as a client, you can say, I need this kind of information, and as the person generating that information, to make sure I'm checking my own work as I go, to make sure I'm filling in just the information that the client's asked for, and that when I hit that big export button, you know, I'm actually handing over the information I think I'm handing over. Well, I know I am. I know what's getting pushed across that handover process.
Yeah, I could appreciate, because again, I think that's, as an information manager, again, day job is trying to explain to people what it is they need to deliver. But until people can see, again, information management is always seen as a reactive, not proactive, because design teams do models, they upload it, we download it, we check it, and then we go, sorry guys, try again. You know, so it's trying to make it a lot easier so that people can actually validate at the point before they actually upload information is obviously the way forward to that. I know that's something you've been working on, Rob, where your new platform, some of the sort of stuff you've done. So how are you trying to show design teams this is what you need to do, guys, and try and make it as easy as possible?
Yeah, like I think to go back just before, to go back to COBE, you know, it's an output of information from a federated team, as Andy said. That's the critical bit, is the federated information. And you could, to go back to your thing, you know, lots of architects working in Revit or designers working in Revit, you could have multiple architects working on the same development. And we've had that as well, where, you know, bringing different architects together. We still need to check that we haven't got duplicate door numbers, not in just one architect's model, but across both. And bringing that together in a federated environment using IFC is one way of doing that in order for us to check the information holistically across the whole lot. Equally, if you give me a door schedule in COBE, just the spreadsheet, I don't actually know whether you've given me all the doors. Giving me the model first allows me to check that you haven't forgotten to send out half the model. You know, we often have that, oh, actually, there's half this thing missing that you should have sent it. So using the geometry is actually important in that. But to go back right to the beginning, you know, it all comes from information requirements in the first place. And a lot of what we've done is use, you know, rules that we've manually built in the past, you know, Celebri being a tool that we've done that process. What IDS allows me to do is to build those rules in a consistent way, not only that I can use it for my checking process, but I can send that to the authors, whether it's Revit, ArchiCAD, Vectorworks, whatever, it doesn't really matter, that they can, then I almost don't need to do the checking, which is what you've been effectively trying to achieve, in that they can already put the fire ratings in because they know they've got to put 30, 60, 90, 120. And all I'm really doing is doing a secondary process to check that. And obviously then bringing that data into a tool like Morta to put it into tables, to then visualize it and then communicate that. But I do think that it's never going to be fully automated. The half the battle is not just finding the errors, it's actually telling somebody how to fix the error is half the battle with this, not just saying you've got no door number. They may well have put it in. It may well be there. It's just not exported and you've got to go and do that investigating. So for me, it's always been around supporting the teams around this process. The more we can automate the rubbish around it, great. But you know, for me, it's actually, that's the hard work, and that's where we should be focused, is helping teams fix their issues.
Yeah, I totally agree with it. Again, actually, our director Andy, he'd spoke at Digital Construction Week about information management. It's not necessarily there to check the data. should they actually set up the process for others to check it? So again, it has to be a more proactive experience that everybody has to engage in. Then if they get stuck, then of course we can help them. That's what our time space is for. William, how are you structuring your data and with Colby, and how do you manage to check and validate that?
I think, yeah, as I discussed in my previous session, I am a client organization. So most people, well, here in effect are appointed organizations. So as a client organization, we're actually the organization that's utilizing and using the information that's coming out of it. So we talk about Kobe. We're on a transition period in migrating into a different CAPM system supplier. So the sort of interoperable data or information exchanging between those is fundamentally key to how we're now delivering our projects. So Kobe is one of the ways in how we're achieving that. But again, going back to the point, defining the information requirements is key to that. And I think, as Rob was just saying then, I'm trying to automate as much as possible. But at the end of the day, how can you, a computer can see if a value is there and check that the value is somewhat compliant, but at the end of the day, it could mean absolutely nothing. But at the end of the day, you need a computer, in effect, to check that. You need a human, to check that. So it's a fine balance between automating, but also that human element that's still going to need to be there. And how we get around that, I'm not entirely sure yet, but it's something that we're actively looking at to make sure that we are producing compliant and validated data rather than just compliant data as per some rules, as an example. Does it exist? Yes or no? Great. Doesn't mean it's correct. And I think that's where probably AI and things like that start to come into things as well. So we see the sort of whole data requirements and stuff quite critical to how we operate at the moment.
Yeah, it's important. Again, everyone keeps talking about the machine readable, but again, at the end of the day, we're humans. So we need to understand it. And I think that's, for my day job, I think that's the biggest thing, is trying to explain to people what it is I've actually signed up to. It's amazing that many people turn up and kick-off meetings, but they just don't know what it is they're delivering. And then when you suddenly explain to them, you see the blood slowly drain from their face, and they realise how much information they've actually signed up to deliver. So that's still a massive risk for industry as well, not realising what it is they've actually signed up to.
Just to come in on that, Graham, just quickly. I do think one of the interesting things that IDS is obviously meant to be a standard that is both machine and human readable as a format to share with people. But one of the things that I've seen with many of these IDS creation tools is you're creating the tool and you can create an IDS output. But actually, how do you put that into contract, and how do you make it readable in a spreadsheet format or still include it in contract? And one of the things Morta does there is it actually enables you to include it within contract and still get an IDS out. So getting the best of both worlds, I think, is still going to be important. People want to look at this information in different ways. Mo will love a table, I love a table, but others might want a document, others might want an interface. So I think it's really important that these standards, they're quite geeky in many ways, but actually they fundamentally support being able to allow us to view this in different ways that we all can understand.
Yeah, it's quite an important point. Again, maybe Andy can feed it as where do you see is that the main benefit for IDS? Is it as human readable as everyone says? Is it easy to format? I know it's still early days, but what are the main ways that people can get involved with this?
Yeah, I guess I'll just start off with a lot of conversations today about I want data, not files. That's the kind of end goal here, and that's a lot of what Morta tries to do. Is to, yes, we want documents for legal, for insurance reasons, and so on. But ultimately, we need semantic data to operate our businesses. And so it's just going to join those two worlds up a little bit, isn't it? And what IDS is doing is digitizing a lot of what's in those EIRs. Now, tables are really clear to read. However, I think even in today's world, there's a lot of ambiguity. I can go and read a table and a requirement there, and if I try and interpret that as to what I need to fill in my authoring tool or what I need to check for in my CAFM system, there's a big grey area quite often. So it may seem really clear. So what IDS is really good at is expressing that very unambiguously about, this is the information we need in this form, in this place, and it can still have a very nice high-level human readable description for what the intent is, and instructions for what the operator needs to do when they're keying this in. as well as all kinds of other metadata about, for instance, I don't know, a link to PSSD, so you can then look up the actual the standard definition of what you should be putting in there. So it provides more than just a one row in a spreadsheet. I expect all doors to have file ratings 30, 60, 90. It can give you a whole lot more metadata around that. You can say why I need that, where I need to put it, exactly how it should be formatted, the units, and so on.
Yeah. I think from my point of view, again, my worry with IDS is how do we know IDSs are getting created correctly? Lots of different platforms are popping up going, yeah, we can do IDS, but then when you scratch the surface, they come back and go, well, we're still testing it.
Over to you, Andy.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, clearly, to version 1 standard, there's a test suite, and so you'd hope that all the different implementers are doing that test suite.
Yeah.
But I think early stages, it's a bit like any new open standard. There's always a bit of, early versions of USB sockets didn't all quite work with each other. You're going to have to give it a 0.1 or whatever release so everyone starts to get on the same thinking and understanding.
Right.
The core of it, there's, for instance, there's a standard, there's a service out there that will verify your IDS to make sure it's sensible, coherent. And there are separate, what they're really going to need at some point is the verification, just as you have with things like IFC on your exporters, to make sure that you are both exporting IDS as sensible and verifying correctly against that.
Yeah. All right, so I'll throw
it's early, so yeah.
All right, cool. So I'll throw this out here. With regards to IDS, all data should not live in the model. I think most people agree with that. If we're using IDS to validate all the data, but the data can live in different places, do we think IDS and Morta on different software platforms, there is a place to try and link all the data together and validate it all? How do we see that sort of ecosystem evolving? Because eventually the 3D model should effectively just be the placeholder and all the data stored somewhere else, because modeling platform is not necessarily the best place to store all this data. So how do we see that sort of ecosystem sort of developing? And I know Rob's trying to jump in here. I'm maybe William just a chance, and then Rob can fill it. You want to fill it that, William?
Yeah, I think I agree with your statement. I think obviously primarily everybody's still focused on the 3D model, but obviously you've got the documentation requirements and information and so on. So I see Morta, our current way of working is specifying documentational information requirements as well as the alphanumeric information requirements, and maybe we can get to that position. I don't know, but I think that's how we're currently. So we specify information requirements or documentation information requirements through Morta, and then we can validate that against the CDE. But I think, again, I'm not entirely sure on IDS regarding documentation. I don't know if it can hold documentation requirements.
So you can check the fundamental kind of presence of document references in there, but it's probably needs some maturing for actual.
Yeah, unless it's in the IFC schema, and then you can check against it. But yeah. So
it's made around IFC. Yeah.
So I'm not sure about that. I haven't really thought about the documentation side of things, but it's I don't know, 90% of information on projects is documentations and stuff. So.
Rob, I know you're dying to get
in. Well, go on, you've got to come in.
Yeah, two things. One is IFC is not just a model. IFC is a schema of information, right? So let's imagine you want to put your installation date, your warranty start date in. That could be done in Morta, in a database, any database. And effectively, if you want to put it back with the geometry, you could push that back through, let's say, XBIM as a tool. You could push that data back. You've obviously got to have a connection between those two things, but it doesn't mean it has to be authored in Revit or ArchiCAD or whatever. So I think that's the first thing to say. I think on the documentation side, I would agree. IDS at the moment, it's version 1. We can all look at its limitations. Andy certainly knows plenty. I've looked at plenty of limitations. But again, I think it's down to us as a community to say to Building Smart and, Building Smart UK and then Building Smart International that we needed to support some of these things. And, even IDS doesn't do quite everything that I need it to do. It doesn't check uniqueness, for example, for door numbering. That's a fundamental to me. So at the moment, if I carry on using Celebri, it's probably going to answer maybe 3/4, 2/3 of my rules. I'm still going to have to add more rules in, but I'm hoping IDS will improve. And equally, documents, being connected to elements in the model. Again, whether it's a boiler commissioning certificate, you still want it to be connected in some way to that model or to that geometry, even if it's not, built in an authoring tool. So that to me is what we should be trying to aim for, is connecting out. But we have to take IDS first of actually it's going to help improve the quality of models for clients and for all of us to be able to use better. And then you can use things like AI built on top of it because you've actually got a half decent data set in the first place.
Yeah, I think that's where our main use of Morta's come into fruition, where it's like we're almost treating models with IDS because we're validating all the data, we're linking that through the TIDPs, which is validating that against the CDE, and then the TIDPs, because we're storing all the copy data, then you can link all the assets to the actual documents as well. So almost like, that's why we're treating almost like models a single source of trust. And again, eventually, you can almost see Morta and other databases almost becoming the new CDE, because a document can live anywhere as long as it's got a secure link. The database can then structure it or link it all together and then fix it by metadata, work packages, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So data can live in everybody's own repositories, but just linked in a database and then disseminated where people actually need it. So there is quite a lot of exciting things in there. And again, I'd imagine maybe there's a few CDE suppliers could actually be quite worried by the way things are actually moving, because Morta can link into it and actually store a lot of data that maybe they can't. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that actually evolves over the next 5 to 10 years anyway. Right, we'll get 3 minutes. We need to finish at 1:45. Maybe we'll just spend this last 3 minutes just speaking about now where we think everything's actually going to ultimately end up. For me, some sort of linked semantic databases. To me, that's the way it's going to go. Hopefully, AI will make it easy for everyone. Almost as you model, it'll tell you what you need to put in and what you need to fix. That eventually could be a good way of doing it. Andy?
I'd like to think at some point files are going to disappear. We're going to stop worrying about individual spreadsheets and individual models, and we're just going to be working with the data that we need at the right time in the right schemas.
Yeah, that's a good way. Yeah, so sort of like so that you just pull data as and when required. Yeah, okay, yeah. William?
I think you made a really interesting point about CDEs as we traditionally know them being nervous, should we say? And I think they should be. I think traditionally, as an industry, we've been so fixated on PDFs and files and tangible documents that things can, or unstructured data as we refer to them as. I think where the industry is going, and this is sort of the advancements in AI, is it's got people thinking about data and having solutions and applications that A, can handle that data, but also B, utilize it and interface with it, I think is key. And I agree exactly with your statement. I think traditional document management systems are hopefully going to be a thing of the past. So
yeah, it's especially when you look at like now the lead appointed party is supposed to validate all the data and then author it or check it and then share it. It's supposed to be a proactive experience, but industry is still very reactive. Rob?
I personally think we're in a sort of position now where we're actually facing quite a major issue in open standards, in that we are starting to see CDE platforms be interested in data and data models, and we're in danger of slightly splitting, in that we could end up with some systems that again are closed systems wanting to put their data into their systems, keep the data in their systems, the Apples of this world, if I was being a really crude example, and then this open flow that we're kind of all talking about and sharing information, between platforms and allowing us to want to use all our tools. I think the danger is that clients maybe naively, like we had all of us model authors wanting to use our own tools. We're going to have clients wanting to use their own systems, and I think that for me is the more of the danger, is how do we make sure these open standards succeed, with clients. Obviously, I work a lot with clients, and making sure that, they're aware that ultimately they might not want to use that system. We're actually moving one client's data and documents, hundreds of thousands of documents, from one system to another at the moment because they want to move away from it. And it is not easy, it's not an easy process. So I agree with Andy, we want to move towards data, but I do think documents will be there for a significant period of time. Certain processes, whether it's certificates or whether it's kind of planning approvals and all this kind of stuff. I think that's still going to be there. I think gradually we should move away from it, but we just need to be careful where we're putting this data and making sure that, you know, that the client or the specifier, the appointing party, has access to that data for the long term.
All right, cool. Thanks for that. Just about a wrap up then. Who knows what the future's going to bring? Could be exciting. Could be just as bad as it is today. Hopefully it'll get better. You know, but at the end of the day, I think everybody agrees that we need to try and work better with each other and make sure we're actually doing things for the right reasons and not just tick box exercises, which a lot of this stuff, quite a lot of people feel it is purely just a tick box and there's no real benefit. So I think everybody has to engage in the process to make sure everybody in the design team, including the client, are actually getting the benefits that everybody can realise. We're not being penalised just as a tick box for IFC, for Kobe, Building Smart, whatever. Again, it should be the benefit for everybody, not just for some. Mo.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. I think I'll just say really quickly there with, I think the beauty of having a community like you is it holds the tech vendor to account, and it holds us all to account, and we're all trying to figure out these problems together. And I think as long as we're doing that, the world will only end up being a better place. So thank you all for sharing today, and thank you for trusting us and being part of this journey again.
Cheers, Mo.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.